Today's project in the shop is we're going to take some of the Buell parts, the carbon fiber Buell parts that Vlad brought over. They need some extensive sanding and correcting flaws, correcting fish eyes. There's some parts of the paint that I have to be very, very careful on. And I'm going to pass on some of the things that I have used in my modeling and in motorcycle restoration that seem to work when you're trying to refinish a part that somebody else has already started the job. And I've done this before. I've done it many times, in fact, and with some good results. And I'm hoping that the tips and the information on this video will be useful to you. Now this is V2. V2 means we're working on Vlad's 3 projects. Today we're going to work on the Buell parts. We're going to try to get them prepped up. And there's a lot of labor involved in this. I'll explain it in detail, and maybe some of that information will be useful, whatever, if you have to ever refinish a part. Now, this is not the first choice of doing parts. I would love to have started with the raw carbon fiber as it came from Europe. These parts came from Europe. But what happened is somebody's already put clear on it for Vlad, one of his friends, and I don't know what brand it is. I don't know how long it's cured. There's a lot of unknowns, so there may be some useful information on this video. But today we're going to work on prepping up Buell parts and hope it doesn't snow anymore. Now Vlad has gotten me many carbon fiber parts over the years from, these all come from Europe, and the quality has been real good. The Buell, the quality is good, but the refinish job is going to be labor intensive. Now in the past I've had as many as 5 bikes in the shop at one time, and it gets really crazy, and that's why I had to go to the V designation, because some of these videos are going to overlap or have 2 separate projects on the same video, and I want to have an ability in the future for somebody looking at the videos that can just search my channel for the letter V and come up with them all in sequence. So let's get down the shop. And it's supposed to warm up later in the week, get above freezing, and we should be able to do some painting later, but today is a prep day. So just to set the stage, yesterday we prepped up the 3 BMW parts. We're waiting for the white paint as we speak. The Motor Guzzi fairing needs a lot of cutting and trimming. We're going to leave that for the lowest priority. We have all of the parts for the Buell here, and I don't know which ones need a refinish, and I'm going to, when next time Vlad is here. But for sure, these are the 2 big ones that definitely need it. You can see how this paint was put on orange peely. You can feel the, well, I know he tried to buff this out, but I don't think it worked for him. And where the emblems are, and of course what happened, this was a vinyl, and he pulled it off so you can see the carbon under there. It looks very nice and very cute, but you can really feel it, and we're going to try to eliminate that. The other one has some paint flaws in, it looks like, and they're deep paint flaws. I don't know how hard it's going to be to get them out, but it's going to be a lot of sanding today, basically a sanding day. But anytime you work on 3 projects at the same time, it can really get labor intensive. It can really get crazy after a while. But we've done it in the past, and we're going to do it again. And today we're going to start, I guess the most reasonable thing would be, I need to start with one part. I'll start with the seat. And again, my technology has always taught me start with the smallest part. And the issue is with the Buell, some of these parts are going to need very different treatment than the others. Some of them have this, the clear looks like it hasn't been buffed in spots, and I'm not sure on all the parts, but I know the 2 fairings have to be resanded and re-cleared, and I know the seat has to be, and I've got to be really careful around this emblem. They put so much paint around that emblem, it really is deep. So the first part we're going to start with, I'm going to clean this thoroughly. Now here are the issues, is because there's not enough clear on here, I can feel the paint lines, and I can feel this, I guess this is a sticker or a decal or something here, but this is so thick that you're never going to bury this in clear. At best, you're going to half bury it. You'd need 50 coats of clear to cover that. That's such a thick sticker. I don't know why they put something like that on there, but who knows. So this is, I have to be real careful going over the joints, number one, and I see we got a sticker on both sides too. But be real careful. Now if I can get this all sanded,
I'm going to use 400 grit and get this. I want a tooth on this. I want a real tooth. Because when I put my clear on, first of all, I don't know what brand this is. Vlad didn't tell me yet. And I'm not ready to paint yet. But in a perfect world, we would have this same exact clear to go over this. But we don't. Oh, maybe we will. I don't know. But in the meantime, no matter what I do, this has to be sanded. And because we're getting ready for some more snow, this is a good day to do it.
I'll mix up some warm soapy water with a little dish soap, nothing special, some 400 sandpaper, and we're ready to go.
Now, step one is always, before you do anything with sandpaper, and I put this on every video because it's such an important thing, not to take a part that's been, and this part I'm sure has been waxed, sanded, compounded, whatever, and it's never a good idea to sand it because that, and again, I repeat these things. The reason I repeat them is because some people are new to the channel, and this may be the first video they've watched. So I don't want to do the big mistake of just taking and grinding that silicone wax, whatever, compound down into the paint. I want to clean it. This is the best way I know, is to use simple green and then wipe it down with any degreasing agent. I use M600, but Prep Wall is fine, and if you can get some other degreasing agent, it's fine. But you don't want to start with a part, and on the parts like the fender where they're really muddy and dirty, you don't want to get that on your hands and then touch everything up here. So if you think, clean the part first, pay the price, spend 5 minutes. If you have to, like in the case of the fender yesterday, I had to take it over to the sink and grind away with a brush. This part's relatively clean, but the whole challenge here is to get this flat without going through into the yellow or the red where these joints are. That's going to be challenging. The only realistic way to do this is just be really, really careful. I need to get an etch. If I were to just paint right over this without etching it, paint would definitely be a problem somewhere down the road. And I know Vlad, like myself, he treasures the bikes, he collects them, he restores them, and then he keeps them. So these are bikes that I'm sure he'll have in his collection for a long time to come. Now I just want to get a rough idea here before I grind into this. Boy, that's thin. I see it's already, the soapy water is already coming up yellow, so, ooh, boy, I got to really be careful. I've got to really be careful when I do this.
Now, even though I put a lot of this in fast forward just to keep the video from getting too long, the amount of times I've gone back and forth, you really can't appreciate this until you do it in real time. And what happens is people think they're going to just do a sand out in an hour or so. This, when you go back and forth over and over and pick out all the little fish eyes and all the little imperfections, when you want a show quality finish, not an auto body finish or a factory finish, there's a price to be paid. And this is the part where you make the biggest amount of time you spend is sanding and detailing parts out before you put the final clear on. It takes time. And there's really no substitute. You have to wipe the part dry, find all the little shiny spots, go back, wipe the part off, back and forth, and it sometimes it seems like it's endless. But at this point in the job, you really have to have patience. Patience above all.
Now, I sanded this several times and I'm real careful with this edge. I've got it almost perfect. The problem is when I started this, the second time I sanded it, I could see the soapy water getting red, so that's it. I'm going to have to put more clear on that before I do anything. But we pretty much have this part. That part is ready for, well, let's hope it is, ready for the day we get to do some clear. And then we'll know right away if we're going to have a compatibility problem with this clear and my clear. So the first of the Buell parts is now etched. Now I want to pass on some tips. I never sand this edge. That edge, if I were to take sandpaper and go right up on that edge, in 3 swipes I'll be seeing yellow. Same thing with the red. If you see, and that's a good tip, see how shiny I left that top, that I call it the top of the mountain? Well, that's a good tip. I know up here there's no way on earth I'm going to bury that. It's about 1/8 of an inch thick, that big sticker. What the heck were they thinking when they put that on there? Oh. Anyway, same thing back here. This now normally, if I didn't have this paint to deal with, everything would be flat. But now you don't have that choice because there's going to be paint edges. I've got to work around that. And see down here, if I start sanding down and try to get that valley before I fill it with clear, what's going to happen? It's just going to go through. And as soon as I go through, I have to repaint that whole thing red then. And that adds at least 1 day and maybe 2 days to the project.
And the two words at this point in the job, fussy, and patient. Those 2 words, if you're fussy and you're patient, what you find out is these jobs take a lot longer than you think they will.
Now the biggest of the parts to clean and sand and prep are going to be the fairing side, so I'm going to take the one that looks like it needs the least amount of sanding. But again, I've got to be real careful wherever there's edges or high spots, mountaintops, or these stickers. I've got to really be careful and really take my time. Now before I start this piece, I want to show what we're trying to get rid of. Right here you can see there's a defect. I'm not sure if I can show it with the light. And this is a part you're going to see. Now here's the worst part of all, right here, if you look, fish eyes. And that's telling me that the original paint that this gentleman put on here, he had issues with fish eyes, because there they are. So and they're right where there's a paint joint. We are really going to have to watch how we do this. This is really going to be challenging. And you got paint flaws up here, chunks. Down here there's some scratches we want to get out. And it's just, this is where the joint is. See, I can rub my finger on that and I can feel it's way gigantic gap there with not enough clear on it. But this is the difference between having an auto body paint job and a custom paint job. And that's why a custom paint job is 10 times the price. It's not just putting paint on, it's all the detailing. Now I get the impression that this has a lot of either silicone or wax or compound or something on it, because everything, there's little fish eyes all over the place, in fact. So I hope, and again, there's not much we can do about it now other than do a thorough cleaning. In fact, I'll clean this part 2 and maybe 3 times and not take a chance that we're leaving on any of that residual stuff. Now, and in the worst of all worlds here, we're going to have to do, maybe this will be 3 or 4 times the amount of time it takes to normally sand something. But if we don't do it now, the rest of the job is compromised, and then you're basically stuck with something that every day you go to ride the bike, you're looking for something that either chunk or fall out or crack or whatever. And this is a bike, I'm sure, because it's a twin, it's going to be a lot of vibration. I don't want that paint chunking off.
Now, I've had several people in my shop over the years learn how to paint their own motorcycles, or learn the skills or share the skills, and modeling and motorcycling both. And the one thing that jumps out for all the people that start this, they think it's going to go a lot quicker than it does. They have a hard time grasping, and even as I put this in fast forward, you're looking at hours and hours of sanding here, and if I left the camera running, you'd be bored. Maybe you're bored already, in fact, but it's just time consuming, this kind of stuff.
No, I just wanted to show how delicate this is. You see up here? This is going to be behind a blinker. You won't even see it. You just kiss that with sandpaper and all of a sudden you're through. And I had to be real careful around this decal. Now, even up by his ear, we're going to try to improvise and put a lot of clear over this decal. But because this is really, they really put a lot of paint around it. I don't know what the purpose of that was. Maybe because, and I'm trying to think, maybe because when they painted this, they put the yellow on over the black without painting white first. I don't know. But here's another thing, another flaw, a giant fish eye. That's a big one. And down here, I got real skeptical about, there were some scratches here, and I could see I was going through into the carbon right away. So what the overall thing is here, I'm going to sand this again, but I'm going to be real careful, because there is not, I'm just guessing what this is 1 or maybe 2 very thin coats of clear, and nothing got buried. That's the problem. Everything, all of these lines you can feel with your hand, and it would have been real easy while this was being done to just put more clear on, but I guess the gentleman didn't.
And a lot of times when you go back over a part the second, the third time, you dry it off, you look at it, there's still flaws, and you say, boy, I'm spending a lot of time here. You go back over it again. Yeah, go back over it again. And I've gone back over and over and over sometimes because I know this is the foundation of the house. This is, from this point on, if I can get the nuclear to bond to this in a real good mechanical and chemical bond, I'm going to have no trouble making these parts into jewelry. But if it doesn't bond right now, I'm basically screwed.
Now the final thing with a piece of dry 400 sandpaper, this fisheye, I know that's going to be a problem if I don't get it down to where it's absolutely flat. I've got to be real careful. That's why I'm doing it this way. Get as much of it out as I can. Detail this part out. Is very little. I probably can fill that amount without being too high risk, because if I go through the red, I've got a lot of work. And it looks like that almost all came out. That'll be enough. There's one bridge down here that's a problem, but I'm afraid to go through the red. I'm going to leave that until I get some clear on it. And the horse here, where his mane, I guess, ends, there's some real low spots. We're going to try real careful to fill that with clear before we do any more sanding. But I think we got one part in the bank here, and I don't know how much time if we're going to get a chance to do the other side, but having one side done feels real good. And when you put them side by side, and you can see this part, well, it's of course dull. This part still has a lot of painting issues. We're going to spend the rest of the day, I guess I'll do it off camera because it's going to be redundant to that part just to keep the video from getting too long, but by day's end I want to have them both sanded out like that, put that in the bank, and I would say this is going to be a pretty productive day. We got the Buell project moving along.
Another good tip, whenever you're doing this kind of work, looking for paint flaws and whatever, work under fluorescent lights. Fluorescent lights show all the issues, show the mistakes. You take this out in the bright sun, you don't see those mistakes as easily. In incandescent light, you don't see the flaws at all.
Now the second side took a lot longer, but see where these, and I wanted to show this as a good trick, not a trick, but a way you can get around it. If I keep sanding there, because the yellow, see what I think happened, whoever painted this, doesn't matter, they had trouble with coverage, and they just kept putting more and more paint. So right here, the yellow paint is way higher than any place else, but the way we're going to get around this is we're going to put extra clear on this. Now, I basically work 4 hours a day, the two fairings and that other piece, and to get this right and get it detailed out, that was about 4 hours of work. Now see, the other thing, I have to get down in the valley here eventually before I actually paint the parts. This part here, they had trouble matching the paint here because the paint is way thicker. You can feel it. In other words, the paint is not an equal. It's, and I don't know how they did it, so I can't really say, but what would have been a really good thing in the case of, and it's a trick I've used many times, whenever you're going to paint yellow and you want to keep the paint thin, paint it white first, then put the yellow on. White and yellow is a lot thinner than if you put yellow. Usually you need 3 or 4 coats to cover. That's an old modeling trick, by the way. And, well, I guess I have to just accept the fact that before I can do really any more detailing on this, the next step on this is going to be, we've got to get at least 2 more coats of clear on there and then resand the whole part out. So this was a lot of labor, and of course we knew it when we started the job. And the problem with it is you have to be so delicate and take your time and keep wiping down. And I did a lot of detailing around the edges because you just can't go right through the edge. Where it's painted, the carbon comes right up. So I hope there's some information on this video and on all the videos that'll at least help you if you're doing a recovery like this. We're doing a repaint recovery. And believe me, it's always a lot easier to start with brand new parts. Or something that you know is all your own paint. Anyway, but we'll do our best to get through this, and I hope some of this information is useful or inspiring, that you'll go out and paint something yourself. So today ended, and as I clean up the shop and organize everything and put all the tools away, I look around and I always like to think, well, we made a nice
a nice bite into the Buell project. We got a bite into the BMW project. And Vlad has prioritized it according to, he wants the BMW first. So as soon as I get the white paint in-house, I can proceed with that. But the biggest thing right now is I'm landlocked because of the weather and because of snow coming this way. We've got more snow coming, but I've lived with this my whole life. I know people that have a spray booth don't go through this, and I've lived with what you see in a driveway right now. I've lived with that my whole life, and I've managed to work around it. And in the end, I've been able to enjoy the motorcycles I've been able to afford, and I never for 1 minute regret any of these restorations I've done. And any of the bikes that I've worked on, I put my heart and soul into. The fact that I don't buy and sell motorcycles, I still have them all. I've got a garage full of toys, and it keeps me busy. It keeps me as young as possible, especially the two-strokes. If you have two-strokes and that they don't keep you young, you're not riding enough. Anyway, I hope there was some useful information on this video. And thanks so much for watching.